Good morning, Volmi.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. About you?
Yeah, me too. I'm fine too. So, okay, another class. I haven't finished the feedback, but I will finish today and send it to you. Okay?
Okay. If you forget, no problem.
No, I won't forget. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I like I like being good, but I also like being bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
part of my ser.
You stay front of the computer,
I won't,
smelling, Ha ha ha. Ha.
yeah, I won't miss the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, mhm. Okay, so let's focus on part one, okay, and then maybe go to parts 3 or 4, okay.
Okay. Volmi, 1 minute, please.
Okay.
I'm back. I'm back.
Okay. Okay, so let's start. So what's the difference between between a good briefing and a bad briefing?
Okay. A good briefing includes all necessary elements for a safe flight, such as check the weather forecast, and the possibilities, destination and alternates airports. And it's a good moment to ask if every crew member is fit to fly, and among others. And a bad briefing don't include these items that I said right now. And it's very, very important to do a briefing before to perform a flight. And it's a good moment to talk about CRM during the journey that the crew members will do.
Okay, so before performing, yes?
Yes, before
Before
performing.
performing, yes.
Uh, I said before to perform.
Yes. Mhm.
Yes.
So before performing. Okay. Alternate airports, okay, without S, alternate airports in
Uh,
items pronunciation, items. Mhm. Okay, and how do you think communications between pilots and controllers will be in the future?
the communication. I don't know. I don't know much about that, but from my standpoint, I believe that communication will be better, and the pilots and controllers will do this communication via CPDLC, via data link devices. And then the pilots and HCs, the pilot and the controller will do the communication with text message, via text message as well. And it is so important because we can reduce the time that the pilots and controller spend to speaking to speak via radio. And then I believe that it will make the flight safer.
Okay, so the communication. So I asked the question using the plural. If you don't use the plural, you need an article. Okay. So every time you think about They inform there is problem. No, there is a problem. If you use the plural, there are problems. You just omit the article, o artigo, se tiver plural. Se não tiver plural, se tiver singular, tem que ter artigo. Okay? The communication will be better. Not communication will be better. The communication will be better. Agora, se você usar que nem no plural, communications will be better. Okay? That's it.
Tá, então, quando tem o communications, eu não uso o D na frente.
Yeah. Mas como geralmente você usa um monte de coisa no singular, aí você não coloca nem no plural e também não coloca o artigo. Então tem que colocar o artigo.
Tá, então, peraí, só para esclarecer. Então, se eu falar communication, não é communication, é the communication.
The communication, yeah.
E se for communications, é só communications.
Yeah.
Ok. Eu pensava que o D fazia parte tanto do, tipo, a comunicação quanto as comunicações. Eu achava que ele varia para os dois.
Sim, mas você fala assim, tá implícito, não precisa usar?
Não sei, mas eu tô falando assim, porque você tá falando que no plural não é para usar o D, né?
Yeah. Porque aqui eu tô falando de communications in general. Você pode usar o the com o plural, mas aqui você tá falando de communications in general. Você tá seguindo a pergunta, ó. How do you think communications between pilots and controllers will be? Lembra eu falei de foco na pergunta? Como é que o examinador usou a palavra? Ele falou communications e não usou o the na frente. Tem que prestar atenção nisso? Tem que prestar, porque já te dá um ponto de gramatical já para você começar e você prestar atenção na sua resposta. How do you think communications between pilots and controllers will be in the future? Communications between pilots and controllers will be better. Pronto, já pegou parte da pergunta. Aquele que eu te falei, olha as respostas, as perguntas que estão dadas para você, as 50, e você tem que olhar para elas e falar, como é que eu vou começar se foi exatamente essa pergunta? Não, você está entregando de graça também com o ouro na sua frente. Que o ouro está 50 perguntas ali. Então, how do you think simulators will improve in the future? Simulators will be better in the future. They will. Então, assim, já começa. Simulators will be... A pergunta já está assim. Simulators, sem o dano na frente. Communication, sem o dano na frente. Né? What do pilots? Pilots, sem o dano na frente. Então, você usa o que a pergunta está dizendo. Yeah. And what are some advantages and disadvantages of being a pilot?
Oh, the advantages, there are a lot of advantages to be a pilot. Firstly, the pilots can work with something that he loves to do. It's very, very important to be happy during the job. Secondly, the pilots can visit a lot of places and meet a lot of people, and among others. On the other hand, the best thing to be a pilot, I believe that there is one thing only. The pilots need to spend a lot of time from away and the family as well. I just can see this disadvantage to be a pilot.
Okay, to be happy at work, not during the job, okay? To be happy at work. It's important to be happy at work. Okay, there are a lot of advantages of being, também entreguei de novo, você falou assim, to be a pilot, mas eu não falei to be, eu falei of being. Tem que pegar da pergunta. What are some advantages and disadvantages of being a pilot? Aí você faz a mesma coisa. There are many advantages of being a pilot, such as... Okay. And pronunciation, advantages, disadvantages, advantages, disadvantages.
Advantages.
Disadvantages.
Disadvantages.
Yeah.
Advantages.
Yeah. Disadvantages. Tem que pronunciar bastante aqui. Não, e sem rapidez, porque se falar com rapidez, assim, advantages of being a pilot, disadvantages não sai. Então tem que falar advantages of, disadvantages. Yeah. Okay. And what advice or suggestions did your instructor give you before your check right?
1 minute, please.
Okay.
Then, okay. Okay, that's right.
And what advice or suggestions did your instructor give you before your check ride?
Okay, before my check ride, my instructor told me to be alert to the any situation that could happen during the simulator. Um, Mainly to plantation when I faced engine failure during the takeoff to try to maintain the airplane lining up during the takeoff on the center of the runway, and then rotate smoothly uh, to climb safely to pass over obstacles. Then after that, he told me something more about some procedures that we did that, and that's it. Keep the center line.
Remember to try not to use do or make during the test. Use everything about perform. Yes, remember, perform a flight, perform a takeoff, perform landing, perform a walk around, an inspection. It's better. Then you don't make mistakes with make or do. Okay, so
Okay.
so use perform instead. Keep the center line. Okay, no, it's not central. It's center of the runway. Center of the runway. And what's the difference between V1 and V2?
Oh, to begin with, I need to say that the both speeds are the speed that are the takeoff speed that the pilot needs to set before performing a flight, a takeoff. The V1 speed is called decision speed because it's the speed that the pilot needs to reject the takeoff before reach the V1 speed. After that, the pilot can't reject the takeoff, needs to continue. On the other hand, the V2 is called safe speed. Uh, it's called safe speed because it's the speed that the pilot needs to reach to perform a takeoff with engine failure and pass over obstacle during the takeoff with the path safely to pass over obstacle during the takeoff path.
To pass over?
Over obstacles.
Ah, ok. Obstacles. Because if you use obstacle no singular, cadê o artigo na frente?
Obstacles.
Obstacles. Okay. Can't reject takeoff. You don't need to use the takeoff here. Takeoff. Can't reject takeoff sem o the. Before reaching, você usou depois, se preocupou em usar com before performing a takeoff, ó, mas aí depois tem que usar para todos, né? Não adianta se preocupar lá atrás e depois o próximo before que você usa, before reaching, yeah. In both speeds. Yeah. Não precisa falar the both speeds. Quando tem o both, nunca tem o the na frente. Tem both. I like both. Eu não sei, I like the both. I both speeds. Yeah. E toma cuidado para não ficar falando de soquinho, assim, da impressão que tá falando assim, meio que no caminho de pedras, entendeu? Tem que ser mais natural. Você tem quando você estiver praticando sozinho, deixar isso mais natural. Então, às vezes, muito acelera um pouco, aí diminui, acelera um pouco, tá meio que não tá no mesmo nível, sabe? A resposta, tá? Então, em termos de voz, em termos de tom de voz, etc., não pode soar estranho, senão para quem está ouvindo soa um pouco estranho. Então, tem que deixar um pouco mais natural, né? And what's the best airport you have been to and why?
The best airport that I have been certainly was at Miami International Airport. I landed there I landed there in 2017, I believe. Yes, 2017. When I lived in USA, and I think it because the airport is amazing. It's so big airport. There are 3 runways there and a big terminal building passengers there, and these airports have a huge infrastructure there. It was amazing.
Okay, pronunciation, infrastructure.
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 Yeah, structure. And it's so big airport is wrong. So it's such a big airport. It's such a big airport. You need to use such a because you're using adjective plus noun, adjetivo e substantivo juntos. Se você falar assim, se você inverter, aí você tem que inverter a frase. The airport's so big. The airport's so big. Or it's so big. Já é implícito que o it já é o airport e você já mencionou antes. Agora, se você colocar big e airport juntos, tem que ser such a. Então, é uma família tão feliz, eles falam assim, they are such a happy family. Então, sempre quando tem adjetivo e substantivo é such a, não é so apenas. So é apenas quando tem o adjetivo sozinho. Ok? It's such a big airport. Okay. And what should be considered by pilots before an emergency evacuation?
Okay, 1 minute, please.
Okay.
Okay, that's right. Let's go.
Okay, what should be considered by pilots before an emergency evacuation?
The considers by pilots to perform emergency evacuation.
Yeah. The considers começou errado.
They consider, yes, considers, yes.
Yeah.
Could
No.
you ask again?
Yes, what should be considered by pilots before an emergency evacuation? Não aconselho quando se começa assim. It should be considered. Não. Pilots should consider. Pilotos deveriam considerar. Aí tal. Aí sim.
Ok.
Porque aqui está usando a voz passiva. Você transforma depois em voz ativa, para ficar melhor. What should be considered by pilots? Nunca quando tem voz passiva na pergunta, você começa com voz passiva. What should be done to avoid tanana problem? It should be done, é melhor começar. Fulano deveria fazer, aí você pega quem deveria fazer. What should be done? I think that in this case, the authority should, né? Não começar com deveria ser feito, mas que alguém deveria fazer. Então aqui é a mesma coisa. O que deveria ser considerado por pilotos antes de uma invocação de emergência? Os pilotos deveriam considerar, pilots, aí começa com pilots sem o the, porque não tem o the na pergunta. Pilots should consider the following aspects. First, ó, aí dá para colocar, dá para fazer assim, dá até para dividir e colocar certas coisas.
Ok. Okay, pilot should procedure. Pilot should consider several possibilities before to performing evacuation, such as fire during the landing or fire during the takeoff. If it's really necessary to remove the passengers inside the aircraft because there is some risk to have explosion suddenly, And finally, the pilots just need to think if to perform an evacuation is necessary, because probably the crew members will face some injured passengers after performing evacuation, mainly when the passengers need to uh, go out from the airplane via escape slides.
Okay. Okay, so several, yeah, several.
Several possibilities.
Yes. Lembra que eu falei? O several você não pronuncia certo. O que você faz como estratégia? Você não usa ele, você usa many.
Okay.
Yes. So, tira o several. Sempre está errando several, então tira. Coloca many. Before performing. Yeah, before performing. De novo, você falou before to perform. Okay. So, and how do you think airports in Brazil will improve in the future?
From my standpoint, the airports in Brazil will be better in the future with a better infrastructure as well. And consequently, we will have more flights around this country, mainly in countryside cities here in Brazil. There will be more flights to the small cities because we will have better airports with better infrastructure. I believe that's the main consideration that will be in these airports here in Brazil in the future.
Okay, but emphasize the airport. For example, there will be ILS procedures, Cat 1, Cat 2, Cat 3, I don't know, in all airports or in many airports, longer runways, better terminal buildings. Emphasize the airport more, okay?
Okay.
Otherwise, you say better infrastructure, but how? What kind of better infrastructure? Okay, so try again. How do you think airports in Brazil will improve in the future?
Okay, the airports in Brazil will be better in the futures. Mainly, I believe that the airports will be with better infrastructure, mainly in the countryside cities here in Brazil, with more advantages for us as pilots, such as ILS procedures, longest runways, and among others things that leave these airports better to receive more flights to these small cities mainly.
Remember, o leave voltou. Não é esse leave que você quer usar, lembra? Você está pensando em português. Que vai deixar, você já pensou no deixar de novo. Português ali mandando. O que você tem que dizer?
Make.
Make, yeah. So try again o finalzinho. That will.
And these improvements will make these airports better, better to have more flights around these small cities here in Brazil.
Ok, great. So, leave, não. Esse leave não faz parte. Ok. So, that's it. And we'll have, se fala assim, will be with infrastructure. Estará com melhor infraestrutura. Não, nunca eles falam estará com. Sempre terá. Will have better infrastructure. Ok. So, longer runway, not longest, longer runways will have better infrastructure.
There will be não tá certo? Existirá.
Yeah, there will be better infrastructure. Yeah. Mas é que você começou com the airport. Você começou com o sujeito na frente. Se você começa com o sujeito, você não pode colocar there will be. The airports in Brazil will have better infrastructure. Agora, se você começa haverá there will be better infrastructure in the airports. Aí sim, você troca a ordem. Okay? Mas se você começar com airports, você não pode colocar there will be. So, that's it. Okay, and what do you think about drones, and why is it important? Why is it dangerous for aviation?
I don't know much about that, but I guess that the drones can be dangerous for aviation, mainly if these unmanned aircrafts are flying around the airport fields. It's possible if some aircraft performing landings, approachings, and taking off, hit some drone flying near the airport field, mainly. Approach and take off.
Approaches and takeoffs.
And take off. Yes.
Not approachings and taking offs. Approaches and takeoffs. Takeoffs. In aircraft, always in the singular. Aircraft, yeah. Unmanned aircraft.
Unmanned aircraft.
And tell me about your routine as a pilot.
My routine as a pilot is very common. I just need to sleep a little bit more, to rest more when I need to perform a flight. And then one day before, I try to sleep a little bit more and rest a little bit more also. I try to wake up earlier and have a good breakfast to be fit to perform a flight. I tried to eat health foods, I mean light foods, to be better to perform a flight. Then I get dressed and go to the airport and by coming a crew desk, I just check the weather and weather forecast as well. Then I perform the flights. Then I come back to home and try rest a little bit more. In days off, I just try to stay a little bit more time with my family.
Okay. And do you think aircraft will operate with just one pilot in the future? Why or why not?
It's a difficult question, but I guess that in the future, probably there will be a single pilot airplanes as a commercial aircrafts around the world. I believe that the aviation industry will find some way to put one pilot in the cockpit to fly these aircraft safely. And I believe that the only thing that it won't possible to exist if the passengers won't fly in these single pilot aircraft.
Okay. And what could, no, let me see. What is read back and hear back? And what are the possible consequences of an error?
Of an error?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The readback is the answer that the pilots or controllers need to do when receive some instruction as takeoff or
When?
such as
Just a
takeoff
minute.
instruction.
When?
When what?
Você falou receive. When?
Receive when. Agora eu não lembro o que eu falei.
Você falou when receive. Cadê o sujeito? Você está pensando em português. Quando recebem. Mas cadê? Em inglês tem que pensar assim. Quando eles recebem.
Ou posso dizer when receiving.
When receiving, yes.
Yes,
Se você deixar o receive, você tem que colocar quando eles recebem. Aí tem que trocar o português. Porque aí pensou no português certinho, com todos os sujeitos que a gente omite, você coloca, em inglês dá tudo certo. Todos aqueles sujeitos que a gente omite em português, pela informalidade de português, que não dá para fazer em inglês, se você colocar todos e falar de uma forma bem artificial em português, pensar em artificial em português, você acerta em inglês. Ou seja, todas as vezes que ele fala assim, comeu? Já comeu? Aí você pensa, você já comeu? Você não pensa no já comeu, você pensa sempre tudo certinho, com o sujeito na frente. Aí você acerta em inglês. Okay? Então sempre pensa nisso. So, can continue. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine.
É para você pegar o seu erro já, se você perceber isso, que foi...
Não, é bom, é bom porque eu vou ficar escutando esses áudios depois, é bom que eu vou, é como se eu tivesse sendo alertado novamente, entendeu? Quando eu escutar, eu vou dar uma olhada. Então, ok, então vamos lá. Okay, the readback is the message that the pilots and controllers need to speak after receiving clearance, such as takeoff clearance, climb or descent clearance, and among others. And what's the order? Is it readback
and hear back? Yeah. And what are the consequences of an error in the end?
Okay. In the hear back, it's just some instruction that the pilots and controllers need to understand. And finally, some errors can happen due to these instructions, and it's very, very dangerous to jeopardize the safety of the flight. I don't know, right? Hear back.
Right, it's the opposite. So there you have the read back, e quem está ouvindo é chamado de hear back.
Okay.
How can you explain that?
The hear back is the message that the controllers and pilots need to listen when someone
is reading back.
Is reading back, yes.
Okay. So hear back is when you hear the information again. Yes, when you hear the information back. So you read back and the other person is receiving back the information that they probably informed. Yes. So it's this process. Use the controller or pilot's going to give some information. The other person, so the controller gives the information, the pilot reads back, and the controller hears back. Yeah. Okay. So, and what are the possible consequences of an error?
What's possible consequence of an error? About the hear back and feedback?
Yeah, communication, right?
You said and an error can cause a misunderstood and it's very dangerous because it can jeopardize the safety of the flight when there is misunderstanding.
Yes, misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Quando eu quero falar misunderstood, não existe.
Não, isso é o verbo no passado.
Tá, misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding. Mal entendido é misunderstanding.
Okay. Mas quando eu quero falar assim, quando pilotos e controladores se confundem, eu tenho erro na comunicação. When the pilots and controllers misunderstanding.
Misunderstand each other.
Each other, okay.
Yeah. Then, Okay. Okay. So okay. So then, and how can, now what's the most difficult phase of a flight? Explain it and why.
I guess the takeoff is the most difficult phase of the flight because it's a very important to the aircraft have performance to climb, and fly over the obstacles during the takeoff path. And if you face, if the pilot faces engine failure during the takeoff above V1 speeds, the pilot needs to continue the takeoff. And then it's a very critical situation to deal with because the pilot needs to fly handily these aircraft and try to climb as soon as possible to avoid these obstacles. Then because of that, I believe that's the most difficult part to deal with during the flight.
Okay. So
No mistakes?
no, most difficult phase of the flight.
Yes, I need to own something because I give an answer without mistakes right now.
So, and okay. Why is it important to perform a pre-flight inspection before a flight?
It's very important to perform a inspection before perform a flight.
To perform?
Before performing a flight.
Começa de novo. Why, ó, presta atenção na pergunta. Why is it important to perform a pre-flight inspection before a flight?
It's very important to perform a pre-flight inspection before a flight, mainly because the moment that the pilot needs to check if everything in the aircraft it's okay to perform a flight, and the pilot can check if there is some problem in the landing gears or
if there is
some problem.
If there is
okay, if there are some problems in the landing gears, on the landing gears,
yeah, with
or
there are some problems with.
Yes, there are some problems with landing gears or engine blades, and it's a good moment to check if the pitot are uh, obstructed, or obstructed. How can I say obstructed? Obstructed, 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 obstructed. If the pitot are obstructed, and and so on are blocked. So,
Find easier ways. Yeah. Okay.
okay.
Okay. So, there is a problem, there are some problems. Você está pensando assim, e se tem algum problema? Aí o português se atrapalha. Então, there is a problem, there are some problems. Yeah. Há um problema, há alguns problemas. Okay? Por isso tem que pensar português certinho. Há um problema. Okay? Tem que verificar se há um problema. Yeah.
There are problems, or if there is problem, if there is a problem, if there are problems, or if there are some problems, if there is a problem. We blocked P2s and probes, stat ports.
Okay.
Check some things. It's a good moment to check some things outside of the aircraft, such as land gear, engine blades, probe heats, stat ports, and no, and so on.
So, okay.
Okay, could you do this question again?
Yeah. So, why is it important to perform a pre-flight inspection before a flight?
It's very important to perform inspection before a flight because it's a good moment to check everything outside the aircraft, such as landing gears, uh, engine blades, probe heats, and pitos, and stack ports, and among others. In general, everything's outside of the aircraft. Uh, it it is good to perform a flight.
Okay. To check if everything outside, yes, outside of the aircraft, outside is okay, is good to perform a flight. Okay. So, and and how can companies control pilot fatigue?
In general, the companies have a software that can manage these situations to avoid the fatigue for crew members during the flight. And these softwares recommend days of duty for these crew members to rest a little bit more to perform a difficult flight, head flights as well. Then generally, this software recommends the manager to give a long days off before to perform a ready IFIs, for example. And that's it. That's it. What I think about that.
Okay. And why did you decide to become a pilot?
To begin with, I need to say that I decided to become a pilot because it was my dream. I remember that I was driving in truck January Recife, and then I saw the propaganda from the flight school, and at the exact moment I decided to become a pilot. I remember that I think to myself, why didn't I decided become a pilot before? then I was a little bit older when I decided to do it. I was with 36 years old, and I decided to go to Itápolis to get all my license there. Then I spent 7 months there, and I got all my license there. And in general, I decided to become a pilot because it was my dream.
Okay. How do you see license in the plural?
License.
This is singular. In the plural.
Licenses.
Licenses. Yes.
Licenses. Yes.
And then I got all my licenses there.
Licenses. Yes, I need to emphasize licenses.
Licenses. Yeah, I got all my licenses there.
I got all my licenses.
Okay. And how do you use CRM in your daily routine?
Oh, I try to use CRM in my daily routine as well. Every time that I need to have relationship with someone in general, I try to have a good communication, to talk something in my at my home, as well with my
To
wife,
talk?
to talk to talk something.
Yeah. Something,
Uh,
yeah. Or
yes, to talk something with my wife.
yes, to talk with my wife. You don't say talk something, to
Okay.
talk with my wife.
To okay, to talk with my wife, and also with my sons, and as well I just try to use a CRM every time that I need to talk with someone.
Try to maybe connect this in your with your job, your daily routine about your job. You know, try to
Okay.
connect more with your job.
Okay.
So how do you use CRM in your daily routine?
Okay, I try to use CRM all the time that I need to perform my flights, to have a good communication with crew members during the flight. And then I believe that is the best way to keep the flight safer during the flights as well. Then I try to use this technique in my home with my wife and my sons, and however with everybody that I need to do communication.
Okay. And what's the difference between VFR and IFR? And which one do you prefer?
Okay. The main difference between VFR and IFR is on the weather. Uh, Under IFR conditions, we need to fly with the instruments because we can't see anything outside of the craft because uh, the weather will be poor and with a low visibility. And on the other hand, the VFR is the opposite situation. The weather will be so good and you can see everything outside the aircraft with a good visibility, and we can fly with visual reference on the ground. And that's it, the difference between VFR and IFR.
Okay. The main difference is the weather, not on the weather, it's the weather. The weather will be good, not the weather will be so good. Because it's strange to say the weather will be so good. The weather will be good.
É melhor esquecer esse so aí, falar só will be good, só good, good,
Yeah.
porque aí eu evito qualquer erro.
Yeah.
Esquecer esse so aí.
Yeah. Okay. And how can the fuel dumping procedure affect the environment? And what can be developed to reduce the environmental impact? Te ferrei agora, foi para fuder.
Sorry, could you repeat?
How can the fuel dumping How can the fuel dumping procedure affect the environment? What can be developed to reduce the environmental impact?
What can what? Sorry, in the English?
What can be developed to reduce the environmental impact?
Okay. Okay, the fuel dump can jeopardize the
Fuel
world.
dumping.
Yes, the fuel dumping can jeopardize the environment because when the fuel is falling on the ground, it can contaminate the ground and the waterways as well. And it's very, very dangerous for the world environment. Then the aviation industry can develop some strategy, can develop some areas to proceed the fuel dumpings as well. Some areas what they can prepare the ground to receive this fuel fluid falling from the sky. I believe that the best way to prevent some dangers, to prevent dangers for our world environment.
Uhum. Tira o world, só fala assim, for the environment.
For the environment, okay.
For the environment. O world não está saindo muito bem. For the environment. Proceed
World.
with. Yeah, proceed with the fuel dumping.
Word está certo, não tá?
World. Tem um L no meio. World.
É o que eu tento falar, é o que eu tento falar no rules, né? No rules.
Uhum. Ok.
Worst and worst.
Yeah.
Tá certo assim?
Yeah. Worst.
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 Worst and
Worst.
worst. Worst and worst.
No.
Is the worst.
Word.
Is the
Worse.
Is worse situation. Is worse situation. Is
Yeah.
worse situation.
No,
Is
just
the
worse.
worst.
Yeah. Situation tanana is worse than
Is
tanana.
worse.
Yeah.
Is worse.
In this
Worse.
situation tanana is the
Worse.
worst. Yeah.
Eu tenho que falar, eu tenho que lembrar da palavra, da palavra, tenho que lembrar da palavra em inglês.
Yeah.
Word, worse, worst.
Yeah.
Okay.
Worse. Yeah, worst.
Words,
And
words,
proceed with, okay? Proceed with the fuel dumping. And develop, não sei por que você colocou develop ali. É escolha de vocabulário errado. Então, por exemplo, develop some places, better placed. E o develop está errado a pronúncia. É develop, não é develop. É develop.
Okay.
Develop. E develop some places. Não, é designar os lugares. É tipo choose.
Can reserve some areas.
Yeah, reserve some areas.
Reserve exclusive areas.
Exclusive areas, or reserve specific areas, specific, mais fácil de dizer.
Yeah. Reserve specific areas.
For fuel dumping.
For fuel dumping. Okay.
Yeah, not develop. Então, isso seria considerado erro, escolha de vocabulário errado.
Mas aí não foi porque eu mudei de pensamento na hora, eu esqueci de colocar, porque eu estava pensando em desenvolver alguns procedimentos. Aí depois eu falei, mas como é que eu vou desenvolver procedimento? Tem que falar com área, não tem nada a ver. Aí eu mudei. Eu não queria falar isso no início. Eu estava falando no meio e aí pensei em falar develop some, aí eu vi que não ia dar e mudei.
Então, that's it here. One more question. Okay. Okay. How was your first solo flight?
Okay, my first solo flight was a memorable day. I remember that I was so tense, and on the other hand, I was so happy because it was the first time that I was alone in the cockpit. And then I did it at Itapolis in 2014. And the weather was so good. I remember that I was lining up on the runway, and I was talking with my flight instructor via radio, and then he told me, let's go, you can do that. And then I took off there and I entered on the traffic pattern there. And I remember that the weather was so good, with calm wind and good visibility, and I performed a great landing at this date. But I believe that I
On this day,
was on this date, and I
on this
believe that
day.
on this day,
Yeah.
yes, on this day. Then I believe that I was lucky, um, at this day.
I was,
I was with lucky.
I was lucky.
I was lucky.
Yeah.
Yes, the first time I said, "Oh, I was lucky," I thought that you
Yeah.
was talking with me because I was one. I was lucky at this day.
On this day.
On this day.
Yeah.
Okay, on this day.
Lucky
On this
on
day.
this day. Ok. Sempre tem a palavra day, tem o on. I was lucky on this way. On this day. On my birthday. On
Ok.
Christmas Day. Tudo que tem day
Ok.
tem on.
Deixa eu só ver uma coisa aqui, que eu tinha notado alguma coisa aqui, quando eu falava time no passado, aí é that time, não é isso?
Uhum.
Naquele tempo, não é assim que eu falo?
Yes.
At that time.
At that time.
At that time. E quando eu falo mesmo com day no passado, tem que ser on day.
Yes.
Ok,
On
deixa eu só-
another day.
Onde foi que eu botei isso? Ok.
Okay. So, and tell me about your history in aviation, your background in aviation.
My history in aviation began in 2014 when I decided to become a pilot. Then I decided to go to Itapolis to get all my license there. Then I started with theoretical class there, and after a couple of weeks, I started my flights to perform my training. And it's very, very important for me because I keep have this knowledge that I knew at this time, and it built my knowledge as a pilot nowadays as well. Then after that, I had opportunity to apply at Rose Alliance. Then I learned a lot of things when I got the job at Rose Alliance, and I'm here as first officer nowadays at Rose Alliance.
As a first officer, the opportunity, os artigos. And the part of the knowledge was very confusing. Eu retiraria. Ficou confuso. I still keep the knowledge and I'm building the knowledge. Retira. Arranca tudo aquilo. So tell me again, tell me about your history in aviation.
Okay, my history of aviation began in 2014 when I decided to become a pilot.
Ok.
A little
Fala
bit.
dos cursos. Private pilot course, commercial pilot course. Você foi para os Estados Unidos, depois o emprego que você arrumou. É isso.
Tá. Mas já vou direto nisso.
É um histórico, é um timeline. History in aviation é um timeline, não tem nada de...
Eu iria emendar justamente aí agora. When I decide to enter Itapolis, eu ia começar a falar isso. Okay, my history in aviation, my background in aviation began in 2014 when I decided to become a pilot. Then I decided to went to Itapolis to get
Ok,
out
devagar, você está falando muito rápido. Começa de novo, lembra? Tá saindo assim, 2014, 2014, entendeu? Os sons não estão saindo. 2013, I started my theoretical. Então, só os sons não estão saindo. Então, mais devagar. Sem correr. Tell me about your history in aviation. I started my career in aviation in 2014. Você viu? Com calma.
Okay, I began my history in aviation in 2014 when I decided to become a pilot. Then I decided to go to Itapolis to get my license there at AJ Flight School. Then I started with theoretical class. Then couple weeks after I started my flights.
Then I got my license there, and I decided to go to US to learn English. But as you see, I couldn't. Then I spent 2 years there. And finally, I had opportunity to apply. I had opportunity to apply at Azul Airlines to get a job as a first officer, and I'm here nowadays as first officer at Azul Airlines.
Okay. As a pilot, as a first officer. Okay, great. So decided, don't forget, ED, I didn't hear. Decided. EJ, não é? EJ, so EJ, EJ. I spent.
Eu falei o quê?
Você falou outro som, a J, você falou EJ, EJ.
Eu posso falar EJ, não posso porque é nome próprio?
Pode falar EJ. ETJ. I spent 2 years there, esse é o passado. E o passado de começou é began ou started, se usa. Se você não lembrar do began, começa, então usa o started. Não é began, é began. Began. In 2014, como eu falei, theoretical pronunciation, theoretical. Okay?
Theoretical.
Sim. Você tenta falar fi, mas você coloca a língua no meio dos dentes. Aí você fala theoretical. Agora tá saindo como um fi. Então não é theoretical, é theoretical. Não é som de T, é um som de F, mas com a língua no meio dos dentes. Toda vez que tem o TH, você tem que falar um som de meio que de F ou de S, theoretical ou theoretical, mas com a língua no meio dos dentes. Aí sai o som certo. Ah, mas eu não consegui me ouvir, não importa. Quem ouviu, ouviu certo. Porque vai sair certo. É como você constrói o som. Bota a língua no meio dos dentes, qualquer coisa que sair, saiu certo. Theoretical. E o resto tá ok. Muito melhor quando você falou devagar. Diga, sem pressa. Mesmo as respostas que você tem mais confiança, não correr durante a prova. Que vai começar a ser um monte de erro. Você não vai começar a pensar. Okay? Você tem que manter o foco. Você tem erros que precisam ser pensados. Não esquece isso na prova. Okay? So, não deixa as coisas rolar e tem uma atrás. Depois que falou, você percebeu um monte de erros. Puta, podia ter evitado dizer, não, agora. Posso voltar? Não, já falou, fez as 3 respostas.
Tô começando a ficar com cagaço dessa prova que eu nunca tive, mas vamos ver.
Não, você tem condições de fazer prova normal. Você só tem que, não pode correr, você está fazendo uma prova. Vai com calma.
A prova que a gente fez ontem, se eu não errasse o tempo verbal da primeira pergunta ali, que eu confundi o before com after, seria tranquilo para um 4
Sim,
ou ainda...
o 4 não tão forte ainda, porque você ainda não está resolvendo esses problemas de pronúncia e alguns problemas de gramática recorrentes.
Os erros de gramática com erro daquele, eu acho que aí são um 3, né? Aí vai para um 3.
Não, eu não acho que só por causa daquele ser um 3, porque um 3, aquele seria um erro de interação, e foi um só, né? E um outro mais ou menos. Não é um só que determina isso. São vários, ok? Então, é isso. Não tomar cuidado com palavras que você coloca no meio que é uso de vocabulário errado, tomar cuidado para entender a pergunta, não entender de uma outra forma, ou pensar que está respondendo certo e responder não o que eles querem ouvir, ir para o outro lado, e esse tipo de coisa. Esses problemas recorrentes com estrutura e gramática e pronúncia, ok?
Ok, só outra coisa, a palavra pitous, é assim que fala mesmo?
Pitot.
Yes. If the pitous are blocked.
Pitous are blocked. Exactly. Então, é isso, tá? É continuar aí firme até sexta-feira.
Ok. Vamos ver. Eu
então,
não estudei nada ainda do meu simulador. Nossa senhora, acho que é a primeira vez que eu vou pro simulador sem estudar nada. Eu vou ficar só estudando inglês. Desde que Deus quiser.
So, that's it. See you tomorrow again at 10. Ok?
Yes.
A gente tem mais 4 aulas. Amanhã, quarta, quinta e sexta. Tá? Quinta a gente faz um outro
tomara,
simulado.
Eu vou hoje para Campinas, eu vou tentar pegar, vou perguntar lá se tem um quarto que seja melhor a internet, porque às vezes tem uns, eu não sei se é o quarto ou se é alguma época que tem muita gente no hotel, não sei, às vezes a internet fica horrível pra gente ter aula, eu não sei Tomara que esteja bom lá.
Se qualquer coisa, se acontecer alguma coisa, você troca de horário, ou troca de...
Tô indo já.
Ou no mesmo dia
Mas
você faz duas aulas, sei lá.
mas o problema é que não vou ter mais tempo, né, de trocar os horários.
Todos os dias agora você vai voar, daqui para frente.
Eu vou para Campinas, só que amanhã eu tenho... Amanhã, terça, quarta e quinta eu vou ter simulador, né? Quinta vai ser meu check ride. E na sexta de manhã eu vou fazer a prova. Depois eu acabei me arrependendo de ter marcado essa prova logo agora. Eu poderia ter botado um pouquinho mais para frente, mas eu tava sem escala. É porque é muito ruim. Você tem que agendar a prova com antecedência, mas a escala sai 5 dias antes de virar. Então, se eu fosse marcar agora, provavelmente não teria antes do dia 15. Aí a escala tá sendo quinzenal na Azul, mas aí esse mês daria, porque não sei por que eles esse mês divulgaram a escala completa, o mês todo, que estavam divulgando só de 15 em 15 dias. Aí no caso daria para eu ter segurado. Mas aí já tinha marcado a prova. E como eu já mudei a data, que era dia 29, era dia 30 que eu ia fazer, ia ser em meio às sessões de simulador, aí eu marquei pro dia 2. Aí como eu marquei pro dia 2, só pode uma mudança, eu não posso mudar mais.
Ok.
Entendeu? Mas é isso aí. Tá ok.
That's it.
See you tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Okay, you too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.